Grab some more chairs or something? Chairs.
That would be great. Yeah, just keep a watch.
You think? We've got at least one out the side. One over there.
Thank you, Mary, for getting some more chairs, but don't be gone too long. Well, welcome, everybody. This is perfect, Jack. I can sit on your lap. Welcome, everybody. My name is Clay Eels. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, and I welcome you to this wonderful occasion today. Well, I'll turn it up a notch. How's that? Or can you come a little closer? Can you switch a seat with somebody?
I usually have to have the sound quite loud.
Well, how does this... Is this better?
I don't want to move. My routine is something I should do.
We have room here. Why don't you switch?
Did you know
That would be a good idea.
Oh no, this is
Can you hear? Well, while we are getting the logistics worked out here,
She wants to hear it.
I got
Yeah.
I just put it back here.
Yeah. There's this one too.
you know, I have to say, my mentor in this regard is our founder, Elliot Cowden, who said, if you are ever in a situation where you're on the fence about whether to have a sound system or not, please do. And he was one of the big members of a group called SHHH, Self-Help for the Hard of Hearing. And the very first thing I would like you to know, before we start anything else here today, is that we are most fortunate to have Elliot's widow, Irma Cowden, who is 99 and a half, and she is right here in the corner. Could you please give her a round of applause? Irma, we're really honored that you're here for this, and her daughter too, Jenny Stimpson. This goes on and on through the generations, this historical society stuff. What we're doing today is, this is the second annual If These Walls Could Talk home tour. And last year, some of you were at the tour we had at what we called the centennial of his honor's home, the 100-year anniversary of Greg and Sharon Nichols' home in the Admiral area. Here we are in the Gatewood area, and we are just so thrilled to have all of you here at this very special VIP situation. And it falls about half and half here. Half of you are guests who are invited to come to share in this program and enjoy it, and the other half are people who live here or have lived here and have stories to share. And that's one of the things that we really thought that this made it a special occasion for us to do this house, because how many houses can you go to and hear from the families who lived there through all of its existence? We're really thrilled about this. Not only is it a stunning house, but in everything we do, I think there is the stuff, and here's the stuff. The house is the stuff, but I really think it's the people. It's getting people together for common purpose. And this is just, like I said, this hour is going to go really fast. What I want to do is recognize some key people, and then we'll get the program going. First of all, we have three people who, without them, we could not have done this, and that is the owner of the home, her daughter, and the owner's niece. And I'm talking about Margaret Hayes, Mary Hayes, and Sarah Barton. Would you please put your hands together? They've done a lot of work. I also want to recognize somebody who's here representing the future. Next year, our home tour is going to be at the J.E. Daddy Stanley home. Daddy Stanley was the one who founded the Ye Olde Curiosity Shop, and he lived here in West Seattle in the Admiral area. And living in that house, owning that house for a number of years now, is Katie Wallum, and she's here to see what this is all about. scare you away today.
It's very intimidating. This is a hard act to follow.
And, you know, there are so many, how many in here are members of our board? Would you please raise your hand? We have Dora Faye Hendricks, we have Peter Nelson, we have our president, Marcy Johnson, we have Carrie Korsgaard. I know Tia's, there you are, I didn't see your hand open. And would you please, they put up with me for a long time here. This is about the busiest month we've had. Would you please give our board a round of applause? And then there are, I mean, the board is the highest level of volunteers, but then you have volunteers who are really behind the scenes. I mean, we have so many today, I can't name them all, but you met them and you will meet them going through the house one-on-one. Please thank them for volunteering. There are two I need to really point out because, again, without them this would not have happened. One is Brad Chrisman, and she's back in the back, but she needs to come out. Bethany Green, please give a round of applause for her. Truly, I couldn't have done this without both of you. Thank you. There's a lot of respect and trust in this team, and it's been wonderful. Okay, let's get on to the stories. Oh, wait a minute. We had some music when we started. Where's Verona? Please give a round of applause to Verona Ryan. She will be continuing throughout the day. So Brad, help me out here. The first family. Mary, are you going to speak a little bit about the first family?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Can I hand the mic to you, or would you like to come up?
Sure, I can. You can actually.
Mike?
Actually, my notes just happen to be right in the most inconvenient spot, right up
Okay.
Thank you.
We have 5 families represented here today. So the first one is the Harpers.
Yes.
And Mary Hayes is going to tell you a little bit about their experience. They were the first ones in this home. Here you go, Mary.
Thank you, Clay. Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary. Nice to meet you all. I just want to also thank the other families and my family for coming. This is very special to me, and I'm very excited to see you all here. And it's a little overwhelming, but bear with me. Okay, so the house was built in 1910 by a man named Francis Harper. Frank. We like to call him Frank. He was born in England in 1859, and he was in the military. So the way that he ended up in Seattle was, first he was sent to Western Canada during the gold rush, and he was a high-ranking official there, and it was his job to settle the forts in kind of the wilds of Canada. And so as he was there, he had quite a reputation. I've got some pictures actually of him then. You can pass around if you want. This is Frank. He built this house. This is him with, This is him with some of his men, and he's the one with the most ornate kind of jacket you'll see there. Here's his obituary, which has some good information in it too. So during that time, he was in Canada, and his wife Pontine came out there, and they had their children. He was sent to the Boer War, and I just spoke with one of his great-grandsons the other day and found this little bit out that I hadn't known yet. But apparently, after he came back 3 years later, he, for some reason, only made it back as far as Montana, and then one of his sons went and got him. And that son had a job here with, I think it's the Pacific Coast Railroad, it says in the obituary, and that's what brought them to Seattle. So he worked with the ships. They lived on Queen Anne, and while he did that, he built this house. At the time, there was no other houses around here. So basically, we like to describe it as imagine this house in the middle of Lincoln Park, and that was how they lived. So it was him, his wife Pontine, and they had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. John, his son, at least 2 of his sons went into World War I. Cecil and Don. Cecil came back, and Don did not. Frank's did a little bit of research after Don was missing in action, and this is as much as he found. You can see his signature at the bottom there. All of this was shared with me from the Harper family, so I'm very indebted to them for their generosity. So they lived here until Frank died, as you'll see in the obituary here, unexpectedly in, I think it was 1924. And he then, his wife Pontine continued to live here and had the house herself. I also just learned that his son Jack moved back in, I don't know at what point, but moved back in with his wife and their kids. So they grew up here as similar things happened with other families later, that the house was so big that it just kind of made sense. So you might have seen that photo that Brad used in his article that had the Harpers in the front yard. And that was, that many of those family members were here. Let's see, what else do I know? Just a little tidbit about Frank's personality. His grandson, or his great-grandson, Jeff, found this in a text from showing the flag, the mounted police, and Canadian sovereignty in the North. It says, despite the best efforts of various officers commanding the police, discipline could not be kept as tight as it was in the Southern, as it was later to be kept farther north, where exceptions were fewer. Behavior was tolerated in the Yukon, which would have brought instant dismissal under other circumstances. A well-known case is that of Inspector Frank Harper, who was a veteran of nearly 20 years of service when he went to the Yukon in 1898. Pierre Burton quotes an old sourdough as saying, "I myself saw Captain Harper of the Northwest Mounted Police bet $100 that he could strip off naked, stand on his head in the center of the Monte Carlo Theater, and eat a pound of raw beef steak off the floor." And he won the bet. So that's kind of as much as I know about Frank, but I think that that's a good bit to know. And yeah, his family then continued to live here. Pontine sold the house to the Clarks, who are here with us, in the early 40s. We believe, we have, at least maybe someone else has been able to scrounge this up, but we believe that it was rented during that time. Maybe she moved in with some of her families, and they just only moved down to Three Tree Point, just past Burien, so stayed close to West Seattle. So yeah, that's about what I have for the Harpers. Pass it on.
Thank you very much. Could you please give Mary a round of applause? And now we move to that famous photograph, now famous photograph of the Clarks. The Clark sisters, the two of you are two of the three in the photo, correct? Who would like to speak for a few minutes about your time? Wonderful. Would you like to come up here? I think this would be good. And just,
Hi, everybody.
you were singing earlier, right?
Right,
This house had a lot of music, didn't it?
Always.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it, Peg.
Let's see, we came to this house, and I think it was in the late or mid 1930s, actually, because my father was a concert accordionist and piano player and symphony cello. And we had been touring all over the United States, and we came to the Northwest, and my father liked it so well that he decided that when the tour was over, he was coming back here. So he did, and within a short time, they found this place, which actually, this was in the midst of the Depression, you know, and the house was a white elephant. You know, I don't think anybody wanted that big a responsibility, and I believe it had been rented because there was some evidence of lack of care, which I'm sure wouldn't have been there if the owners had been living in it. Anyway, so we came to live here. There were three sisters, myself, Peggy, Dorothy, my little sister, and Jean, my older sister, who is not here today, but we're all living it up. I loved, the house was full of music because my father played and he practiced, and of course he had jobs and he taught music also. But he used to play the piano, and I loved to sing. So I would come down and I would persuade him to play. And as long as he would play, I would sing. And I loved it. And what a wonderful welcome to the house to find that somebody was playing the piano here. Oh, I mean, it was like coming home. And for a number of us, this is home. I grew up here, did all sorts of crazy things like climbing out of that window. You and I climbed out of that window in the middle of the night one time with a little friend from over across the road. And I don't know if I want to tell this or not. But we were trying to haul her in. And we had the window open. We had hold of her. We were trying to pull her in. We finally realized that she was trying not to be hauled in. And do you remember? No, it wasn't you who did it. I went around to help boost her, and I discovered that she had wet. And had wet all the side of the house. So she was afraid to come in. Well, anyway, that was
Great story.
this home just seemed barely big enough, you know. I mean, I loved to dance and sing, and my sister Jean and I used to make costumes for the children, and I think there's a picture upstairs with a little girl with wings on. That was a costume we made for a niece. We made all kinds of costumes and doll clothes. The room that is now called the Clark Room was actually my creative room, where I would do writing and sewing and all sorts of stuff like that. The room up here, which I think is now 2 rooms, was mine because it had 2 closets and a lot of space. And yeah,
You were talking about both the time when you were growing up and the time when you were married and had kids and we all came back here.
right, right. Because we grew up here, but then we came back here again with our children, and we had various relatives who needed.
Just her.
All
We
right.
lived here, they came to visit.
Do you want to correct me? This is one of my daughters, and her job in life is to correct me. My mother had grown up in England, she was poor. She always wanted to live in a big house, but as soon as she got into the big house, she started doing things like sanding the floors and doing everything by hand, you know, to get the house in shape. And the floors, now they're oak, or whatever. But back then they were fir, and when she'd get done sanding and varnishing, they would look like the back of my father's cello. And it just glowed, and those floors just glowed, but they were soft wood, and it was really hard to keep them going. And they have replaced the old stairs with oak too, up there. They've done some wonderful things, but also I really appreciate that they have kept the quality of the house. Like this, it looks just the way it did, you know, except for the beams being somewhat different, but it was beamed all around anyway. But we had the same wainscoting, the same plate rails, same windows, same French doors. Everything was the same and looks the same. I'm going to put a few pictures up in the Clark room, spread them out on the bed, so if anybody wants to see them, they can. Must be my turn. I'm Dorothy. Hold it right up to your house. I'm Dorothy Clark Rasmussen. Is this better?
Yes.
And I wanted to tell about how the house was. It had a dirt floor in the back and rooms in the front down below. This is down the level down below. And Peggy and I used to have to put fuel for the furnace into the corner room down here. It was used as a bin. It was a bin for sawdust, and then later it was a bin for coal. And we had to pull it in to the windows with things like snow shovels.
Oh, wow.
Can you hear me? Am I doing this right? Yes. So that's the way it was then.
Wow, yeah.
And I don't know if we ever did anything about the dirt floor. I think somebody else must have corrected that and made all those changes. There was only one bath, there was 2 bathrooms, and they were on the top floor. And my mother did the laundry down in the basement in a tub that had a spinner. So it was an old thing, and it could have leaked. And so that was over the dirt part. And, well, she wanted a bathroom, and so she built one in the kitchen on this floor. And there was right isolated in the middle of the kitchen, well, on this wall. And, with walls.
Wow.
and I don't remember whether it had any windows in it or not. The toilet was the essential part. Mama also used to do dry cleaning. What she did was she'd take gasoline down the basement, pour it into the washing machine, and put the clothes in there, and the rest of us would leave the house. I don't think I did. I admired my mother. I had a dark room in one of the narrow rooms upstairs that my mother made for me. And she put in a sink, I think.
Yes.
But I don't know that I could, I learned how to do films in there anyway. It was very nice for her to fix it up for me. And then I did buy a big washer that I put in another place that would hold a lot of water and wash. Yes. So you're wanting this microphone back? Are there any questions?
We only have 5 hours here today, so. Thank you. Give a round of applause to Dorothy.
I'm Dorothy's son. Am I coming to the microphone?
Yes.
They didn't mention the goose. The central fact of living here was the goose. I believe the goose was purchased for Thanksgiving dinner, and it was deemed to be too friendly and not fat enough. And so I went on to be a Christmas dinner goose, except when Christmas came around, it was too daunting and not nearly friendly enough. And so the goose would patrol around out here, and we would come over from Paulsbo, and I would stay in the car. Mom and Dad would go back and forth between the house and the car a couple of times, and when they told me it was clear, then I would come over. And I understand that the meter reader for the electric meter had to be
And the garbage man.
and the garbage man had to be pulled down off the top of their cars after the goose had been put away. Grandma could do anything she wanted with the goose. That was Lottie. She could do anything she wanted with the goose. Everyone else was in mortal fear of the goose. And so anyway, after the incident with the meter reader, he never came back until the goose died many years later. Then he read the meter, and then I guess the electric bill just about broke Grandma. So I had to interject that.
The garbage man, the goose, her name was Gita, except she turned out to be a gander. Anyway, the garbage man would load up and he would get out of here as fast as he could. And the goose would follow the truck, and then the truck would tear down Gatewood Road and the goose would go flying out.
Thank you. This is the Clark family, everybody. It's like a family reunion times 5. The Frosts. Who's going to be speaking? Come on up here, Jack. Jack has a name that is ungoogleable. In other words, you cannot find him.
Oh,
Because if you Google Jack Frost, you get something completely different.
that's right. It's my cover.
Here you go, Jack Frost.
Hello. Am I loud enough? My several of my family are here. My sister Janet is over here. My sister Jill. My partner Jim is here. And there's a couple of other, a nephew and a partner somewhere here too. They might be off somewhere. Anyway, we were here from 1965 to 1969, one of the shortest families here. We bought from the Clarks. And I was just about 7 years old or so when we moved here. We were a military family, and my dad had been in the service 20-some years, and this was actually our first home as civilians, even though I was one of the younger kids and already 7, so this was kind of our first place after we got out of the service. We came straight from Germany, and having been in Germany for several years, and arrived here. I was just thinking, listening to some of you, the Clarks, and information about the Harpers too, has answered some questions certainly about when we moved in here. We're the ones that tore the bathroom out of the kitchen and kind of gave my mom more kitchen space. We did hear the story about the goose, and there used to be an old stump house, which is like a tree house that's built on top of a stump that looked down over the ravine, down toward the street. So when you stepped into it from behind, just a step up, you suddenly were looking down as if you were in a tree house on the other side. But I heard that the goose had taken that over or something to that effect. It was a coal furnace when we moved in, so my dad, us boys, we shovel coal to keep the furnace going, and I think we converted it at some point to something else that was in here. Anyway, my folks, this was their first home. One thing I always remember, as I say, we were a military family. We moved a lot. We were only here 5 years and moved many other places since then. And we were our own best friends. We're all still together now, but we're up in Bellingham area. We were our own best friends because we moved so often. And I remember as a little boy, on Friday evenings, my dad, after he left the service, became a banker. And so he would arrive at home for the weekend on Friday evening. My mother would all be dressed up in 60s, probably more toward 50s attire, waiting for him at the front door with a martini when he would arrive home from work. And there used to be a separate room at the end of the kitchen there that had the fireplace in it. We used to call the martini room. She would set all of us kids up, either out here or I think even downstairs with TV. and maybe pizza or something like that. She'd fix a separate meal for my folks, for her and my dad, and we could be sure that they would be up in the martini room with music going and dancing, the two of them, and kind of doing what they did during the service at officers' clubs and things like that as they were going through the service. So that's one of the many things I remember. We were here for the earthquake in '65. I don't know if that was actually, I've been told since, was an aftershock from the big Alaska earthquake, even though it happened almost a year later. We were in the house. My mother had plates everywhere, on all the plate rails, etc. I was in the house. My brothers and sisters had headed for school. I was in the house gathering waste baskets to get the garbage out, and I had them all lined up at the top of the stairs there. My mother was still in the house, and all of a sudden the house starts to shake. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs. The waste baskets, one by one, are starting to tumble down the stairs. I didn't know what to do. My mother runs around to the bottom of the stairs and is kind of looking up around the corner and yelling at me to stay up there, do not come down. And she's standing there and she can't go up. One of the reasons being is one of the many things we brought back from Germany, a very, very tall grandfather clock was on the landing. And it kept swinging out toward her. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs watching it swing back. She lost one plate off a plate rail in this house. Many of the chimneys went down in the neighborhood, but we didn't find any damage to the house. It went through the earthquake beautifully. And so that was definitely a memorable event.
These beams may have had anything to do with it?
The beams, and actually it was just the one beam here originally. The Hazes have added the two other support beams here, so it was just the center beam originally in here. But the house did perfectly well through that. Anyway, the house was full of music here. I'm a pianist, and my sisters used to sing, etc. I actually, and my mother's, this was her home, West Seattle. She attended Gatewood School, elementary school, which is where we all went.
Me too.
Years later. I actually took my first piano lessons from her piano lesson teacher, who was Sid Woody, a jazz pianist from the big band era. And so my family was very much West Seattle family. Last thing I wanted to mention, this was our first residential home. My grandmother, who was also longtime West Seattle family, J.B. George's, had a beautiful house down by the ferry dock down there. My grandfather died when she was very young. He was 40.
I think he was 54 actually.
54?
54, yes.
And he died in 53, right?
Yes.
She still, I believe, had a son at home. I'm not sure if
Yes,
Uncle
yes.
Jerry was still at home.
Yep.
And of course she had a home and it was unexpected. She immediately went to, he was a real estate agent, worked for Clarence Czar in West Seattle. She immediately went to Clarence and said, I am a single woman, I have a kid still, and I have a home, I need a job. And they welcomed her in. She was, we believe, was the first real estate agent, female,
Female real estate agent here.
in West Seattle. And she found the home for us as we were coming back from Germany. And anyway, most of her family and our family are still in West Seattle, though all of our immediate group is up in Bellingham area and love being up there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to,
Yes.
Oh, the dogs. It was very interesting. Jim and I, we've sometimes stopped by the house, just with different family events. About 3 years ago, we stopped by the house, and Mary was here. First time I'd actually met Mary. She was here many years ago when I stopped by, but she and her sister were off somewhere or something. Anyway, we stopped by, and we were down at the bottom of the driveway, and Mary comes down the driveway with a beautiful St. Bernard, that they have. Anyway, when she got to the bottom of the driveway, we immediately got to talking, and I said, by the way, she looks exactly like the German, or the Saint Bernard that we brought back from Germany. Our first family dog was a Saint Bernard, and we've compared the pictures since, and they're a very white, they have lots of white on them, which is unusual for a Saint Bernard, but it literally, Judy looks just like Mary's Saint Bernard. So we discovered many things that even though we were a full generation or more of families separated in the house, the Odekirks were after us in many years here, that all these similarities kept coming up, and so anyway, that was one of them. My folks loved Saint Bernards, and we had many while we were here. So I'll turn back over to you.
Jack,
Thank you.
Oh,
we
boy.
need to say what we did with the dark room.
Oh, the dark room. Sorry, really quickly. There's been a mystery in the home as far as who installed a urinal in the small, what used to be a laundry room that became your dark room. And my dad, military, I guess, I don't know what it was, but there were two big bathrooms up there and then that small room, and he just thought the back end of the room by the window there was a perfect spot for he and the boys to do what we needed to do. So the urinal came from my dad.
Thank you, Jack. Wow. Think about it. If these walls could talk with what's happening today. Now we're 3 down, 2 to go, plus we have a bonus, and we're running a little long here, but we're moving. We're moving. Next is the Odekirks. Who is the Bill? You going to do this?
Oh, yeah.
Here, let me get you up there.
So this is like the Oscars, you don't want to cut them off.
That's right. I don't want you to come this too far. Yeah, over here. That's great.
We had, at the time we bought this house, we owned a little grocery store up at 39th and Kenyon, Gatewood Foods. And about 6 months before that, I bought the Lincoln Park grocery store down by Lincoln Park. And we would open up the store at Gatewood, or I would open it up at 7 in the morning, and my wife would come up about 8:30. Then I'd walk down here to Lincoln Park Grocery to open it at 9. And one morning I was walking down, and there was a man in the front yard here, and he had a for sale sign by owner on it. And I stopped, and my wife has been in West Seattle since first grade and went to Gatewood High School and junior high here and West Seattle High. And she always loved this house. She always showed me this house. And she just thought this was the greatest house. So I'm walking down here one morning, and there's that sign out there, and Jack Frost is out there. And I said, I see you got your house for sale. He says, yeah. He said, would you like to see it? And I says, well, I can't now. I got a store to open, but yeah, I'd like to bring my wife back and look at it. And he said, fine. I can't remember the exact time, but probably real soon thereafter, I brought her back and we looked at it. And of course, my wife fell in love with it, and I did too. It was a beautiful house. But at the time, we had, just to put things in perspective, we had a little house at about 40th and Kenyon, and I think I paid about $10,000 for that house, which was the going price for houses at that time. And my payment was $105 a month. So we come down here and we talked to Jack, and he was asking $39,000 for it. Well, that's a real bargain today. Back then, that was 3-4 times what houses was going for. And so we worked it all out, and I had the two little businesses going, and things were going pretty good. So I was way over my head, but I stuck my neck out, and I agreed to pay the $39,000. And my house payment went from $105 to just a little over $300, which was 3 times what I was. And I was kind of out at the end of a plank sawing it off behind me. But we made it work, and that's how we got here. Now, I had 4 children, 2 of which are here today, Lisa and Scott. And they went through most of their school here, lived here during their formative years, and it was great. I couldn't have been happier. Now, for some of the funny things that happened here, right where that door going into the kitchen is now, there was not a door there, there was a wall. And right at the bottom of the door was a great big a heat duct. And on Christmas Eve, we were all sitting around here, there was a Christmas tree over in the corner. And so it was getting cold, so we turned on the heat. Well, the heat starts coming up through that duct, and at that time, that half of the basement was higher than this half, and it was a real rough floor, and we had problems with rats and mice. And he turned on the heat, and all of a sudden the rat sticks his head out of the vent. And we had a cat named Valentine. And Valentine is over against the wall, lined up with the vent, and I'm on this side with the broom. And the rat comes and gets so hot he finally runs out. Valentine jumps for the rat. I bring my broom down and hit Valentine on top of the cat. Didn't hurt the cat, but the rat ran over the Christmas tree, and my brother-in-law finally got a broom and hit him from underneath the stereo and killed him, and we took him outside. Anyway.
Bill, up to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then the other thing that was really kind of sad and weird, my wife and I had an appointment, and I've told this story before, and I can't remember what the appointment was for, but it was important that we'd be there on time. And we were running a little late, and we had a little dachshund dog. And the dachshund dog was really rather old. It was probably should have been euthanized about that time, but you know how you hold off. And so we had our car parked diagonally right to the driveway there, and we ran out and got in the car, and I backed it up, and I heard clunk, clunk, clunk. I looked out, and I ran over my little dog. And over here beside the house, we had a garbage shed with doors on it. And we were running late, I couldn't do anything, the kids would be coming home real quick. And so I told Carol, I'm just going to put it on the garbage can, and I'll take care of it when we come back. So I picked up the little dog, and I put him in the garbage can, closed the doors, and went. Guess what? When we came back, the garbage men had been here. So, I don't know what the garbage man thought of us, but probably. And then, of course, my kids, they finished high school, and they all moved out, and there's Mom and I in this big old house. So, it was time. We decided it was time to sell it. We did. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of good memories. I've told people 20 years, but I think I must have been a little short of that. I used to call it my ferry boat, because we'd go down on the ferry boat, and the ferry, these old ferry boats, they would have a painting crew. Maybe it's only a 2-man crew, but they'd start painting somewhere, and they'd paint all the way around the boat, all the way around. By the time they got to back to where they started, it was time to paint again. You know, and that's the way this house was. If it changed color, I'd start over on that side, and I might paint two floors, and then the bottom floor that year. Next year I'd start over here, and maybe 1 floor, and then another floor, and then over here. By the time I got around to the other side again, it was time to paint again. It was a lot of work, but it was fun and well worth it.
So I'm Lisa, and I'm third of Bill and Carol's 4 children. And just a few things I remember. There used to be a big madrona tree right here at the corner of the house, and I was it Scott, you and Mark, or you, I don't know who did it. Somebody put a big rope swing, or maybe the Frost.
It was here.
Okay. Well, I remember being, because I was 8 when I moved in here, and I remember my big brothers. They were so brave, and they would pull that rope up, and would you go up in the tree, or would you jump from the porch?
We go up in the tree and jump out.
And they would jump out, and that swing literally went all over the front yard. I mean, you felt like you were flying and then come back.
We'd swing around, and we would time it just right so that we would have our feet and kick off the tree when we came back.
Well,
So we can
I
go
was
back
watching
over
this,
it.
taking notes, and at some point I got big enough and brave enough to try it. It was such a thrill. So that's one great memory. Lots of great memories, and yes.
It was my father apparently that put up the swing.
Oh, was it?
When I was a little kid living here.
And well, that Madrona tree no longer is here.
Right.
And I had written a story on the large branch that held the Madrona, you know, held the tree.
I remember seeing something scarred into the tree.
Yes,
Yes.
that was a story I wrote.
I
I spent a lot of time up on that branch.
And I can add to this story is Sally, who is not here, is the youngest, just after Lisa. And Sally was the most timid about getting on the swing. Mark and I, we were little, buccaneers, just swinging around on that thing. But finally...
Come up here, Scott.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just, as a kind of an anecdote to your story.
Yeah.
Sally, we finally coerced her. He says, "You can do it, Sally. You can do it. You can do it." She goes, "Okay." But she was, it took a long time to get to this point. So she get her, we showed her how we do it. We shove off, come around. So she said, "Okay, I'll do it." So I go, "Oh, we got her to do it. Look how brave she's being." So she got up there, she pushed off, and right when she got to the furthest extension that the swing could go, it broke and she fell into
She sort of flew.
She kind of flew. So I guess all of her expectations were met. She expected it and she got it. So she didn't do that again. But Mark and I tied it back up and we were off again. So.
Yeah? When I was growing up here, I was such a tomboy. When I was about 12, 13, 14, something like that, I would climb up on the roof.
Yes, we did that.
Yeah. And I'd go over there to where that Madrona was.
Yeah.
And I'd jump and catch a branch. There were two ways to get down. You could get down the Madrona, or there was a dogwood tree out there. Yeah, I used to get down that way too.
Nothing on you.
So the Madrona, everybody's relating to the Madrona, and then I can remember upstairs that we would tear around in circles playing tag, just tearing in circles. And then when I learned to do gymnastics, that was a balance beam. We'd walk around up there. Yeah. But my husband, Tim, him and I, we got married in the front yard in 1981. And came back here last summer. And when you guys first opened, and we celebrated our wedding anniversary. And I don't know how many people can say they got married in the house and 32 years later could come back and stay there as a guest. Pretty special. And then one last rat story, because I don't know if there was, it was just, I guess this is just part of old houses. I was pregnant with my first child. My father had taken my two brothers, and the three of them, and my husband, and they went on a fishing rafting trip. Is this better?
Yeah.
So my dad took my husband and my brothers on a fishing trip, left me and my mom. I came and spent the night with my mom. I was pregnant, and we were is it the Harper room now?
Yeah.
It's like on that side, and then my bedroom was over there. So we were sleeping in the room in between where the flat roof goes out, and it was my mom and dad's bedroom at the time. It was just my mom and I, and she liked to sleep with the windows open, and we're tucking into bed, and the window was open, and I said, "Hey, Mom, let's shut that window." And she said, "Oh no, I like to sleep with that window open. We like the fresh air." I go, "Well, shut it a little bit." So we got it to about that, just a little bit open. And I'm not kidding, in the middle of the night, I woke up, I had the feeling that something was watching me, and I laid down and I opened my eyes, and about 6 feet in front of me, right at level with the windowsill, there's a rat on the windowsill, with that little window open this much, and my cat, Valentine, on the other side with her hold of the rat's tail. So the rat's leaning towards me, and I'm like, "Mom, wake up, there's a rat." She thinks I'm crazy. She sees that. She goes and grabs a broom, smacks that rat that scared the cat. The rat dropped in and ran under the bed. And my mom and I are screaming and up on the bed. And I have to tell you, we got that broom and we beat the holy hell out of it. We beat that rat until it was literally staggering. Went over to and we put a garbage can over the top of it. We slid a little paper under it, and I opened the window, Mom, and we threw this rat with the garbage can out on the flat part and shut the window and yeah. So there we go.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, now we're here, we're heading home. Actually, we've been at home the whole time. Who of you wants to come up and talk?
I guess we'll let Mary.
This is the Hayes family, been here 27 years. And welcome Mary again.
Thank you.
Set the record.
Sure. Yeah, so we've been here 27 years and I'm 29. So this is the house that I remember entirely. And when I grew up here, it's amazing to hear these stories because there are things that are the same even years later. And so the madrona tree with the tree swing was one of my sister's favorites. I was a little too young, and she would swing out, and it was much beloved until my cousin broke his arm on it, and then I don't know how much longer it stayed there, but eventually the tree had to be cut down because it was gonna fall. So the stump of the tree was in the front yard for years and years, and that's where I played. I played in the stump of the tree, and it was, there was fairies and trolls and all that kind of good stuff. My mom likes to say that one of the things she likes about the house is that her children never had to leave when we were kids, and that was true. We never did. Tree climbing was a big deal, although I was not as brave as you are, Peggy. I probably only got this high off the ground, certainly not 3 stories. But yeah, just always in the trees, always in the yard. We used to camp out, just sleep in the front yard in the summers with blankets. And just, it was like living in a park. It was just, people always came here. Holidays were always here. I have a big extended family. My mom is the youngest of 5, and they all live in Seattle, and she has 27 first cousins, 24 of whom all live in Seattle. And so, family gatherings were always here. Christmas tree there, Easter egg hunt in the front and backyard. We had to wait inside. Couldn't be near the windows to see where the eggs were going. And I remember just that taking so long. And then, because we were old school, we had the eggs with the candy, but also the hard-boiled eggs. And inevitably, during tag in the summer, you'd step on a hard-boiled egg about 4 months old, and that was pretty gross. So then the second part that I guess was maybe a little different from everyone else is really what you're seeing now, the house as it is, didn't happen until I was almost high school age. But we started the remodel in '94. So basically, we also grew up in a construction zone. The basement, when my parents bought the house, my dad completely made it an apartment. It's a self-sufficient apartment. So the 4 of us lived down there exclusively for 2 years, and everything up here was torn down to studs. You can see some of the pictures in the kitchen of, just all the original woodwork was taken down, but saved so that it could be stripped and restained. The floors were not salvageable, unfortunately, but they were used to make these extra beams. So those are the original floorboards. And just every effort to maintain the house and maintain its integrity. And we just lived down there exclusively for 2 years, and then we had family coming to visit. We didn't have anywhere to put them, so we rushed and finished the bedrooms, and we slept upstairs. This was construction, and then kitchen and living room and laundry were downstairs. So we lived that way for a while, and slowly this was finished. And then the last kind of details were put on the outside when my sister and brother-in-law got married here 5 years ago. So we also had a wedding here, which was great. I have an earthquake story that it kind of ties to yours, Jack. Most of us, I'm sure, remember the big earthquake about, 12 years ago now, around Mardi Gras. I was learning how to drive at the time, and my dad was teaching me how to parallel park. We were just up in, near White Center, And so I'm parallel parking and doing all right at it, I think. And we come home and we come in, and these, actually many of those plates and that picture, they're on the ground. Some of these are on the ground. There's a hairdryer upstairs that's fallen, it's on. Our dog was locked in the kitchen, and the kitchen was the only area in the house that was untouched. It was like, just this back window was open. The dog happened to look a lot like that. And we came in and we thought, oh my gosh, someone has broken into our house, you know, call 911. So my dad called 911 and he said, you know, someone's broken in, the window's open, there's stuff broken, and the guy on the phone said, sir, unless there's anything missing, I think that you and your daughter are the only people in Seattle that didn't feel the earthquake. So it still held up though, as you said. It was amazing. Another memory I have from when we were kids is actually the house across the street caught fire, and we were watching it. We were watching the flames over the trees, and I remember someone told me that it was a big, I mean it was obviously a big deal, but that it was a big, big deal because we had a TV here in the corner and we turned it on and we were watching it on the TV and we were watching it across the street as it happened. Yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah, I think that's...
Hey Mary,
yes?
was there a laundry chute? There used to be a laundry chute in the kitchen that went down in the basement?
Oh God, I wish there was a laundry chute.
No.
I begged for an elevator carrying the laundry from the top floor to the bottom floor. I also begged for a dark room for years. Didn't happen.
There was a laundry chute.
I know.
It dropped down over the utility sinks in the old part of the basement, by the furnace.
I don't remember.
Oh, at the back of the house?
Yeah.
It would be like, yeah, it was in the kitchen, you drop it in the kitchen, and I remember it was in this old cement part. It would open up.
I think
Maybe,
there was.
yeah.
Wait, I don't remember that. You must have blocked it off by
I
the
think
time
there
we got
was. My dad put in all the, of course, there was nothing in the kitchen except the porcelain sink. Like kitchens used to be. The bathroom we removed. My dad did, of course, naughty pine was the wood of the day, but did cabinetry all around the kitchen. I think he might have just either ignored or cut off a chute that was there at one point. Because I do recall the bins downstairs in the back of the basement had a chute coming down, I think.
Yeah, I remember because it looked like a drawer and you pulled it down. It kind of went like that.
It could have come from the bathroom upstairs, I think even. But it was, yeah.
I do remember it because I think Mark went down it.
You know, but Mary, I just want to say, it's so great that you've had this, and it's so great meeting the former residents of this, and your family has resurrected and restored all of our dreams. It's just, anybody that's lived here has this memory of this place, and you've really resurrected it beyond my wildest imagination. I just want to thank you and your family for maintaining all of our dreams.
That was definitely due to my parents. Okay, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow. We could go on for a long time. As good as all of this has been, I've got a bonus for you. We have a bonus for you. Those of you who were at last year's home tour know that this is going to be a treat. We have with us, and Carrie, it's time to come in. And come on up here, Greg. We have Greg Lang from the King County Archives.
Oh, cool.
Let's, I'm thinking over here so that it's not backlit.
Okay.
And maybe kind of angled in a little bit. We've got an easel for you.
Oh, great.
Last year really was the formula being set for this kind of an event for us. We've done home tours in the past, but this really evolved into something special when not only we heard from Greg Nichols about the history of the home, but we had put display panels all around the home to talk about all of the families who had lived in the home since it was built in 1913. Well, then we have Greg Lang, who we thought was going to talk about how to look up the history of your own home. Greg Lang is a secret weapon. He came in and told us about all the people who owned the land before the house was built. I can't wait to hear what Greg has for us today. Would you please welcome Greg Lang of King County Archives.
It's great to be set up like that, Clay. The high expectations here
Yeah.
to finalize this. But it's always fun to kind of delve into the history of a piece of land, a dot on a piece of the land, just to kind of delve into all these layers that go back to the beginning of time. And that's what I did. But before I do that, let me just give like 60 seconds on how to do a history of your house, since that's kind of what I was supposed to do. I put together a brochure, a flyer, right here on people that want to do a basic, get kind of 10 steps to do a history of your house and some of the basic information that's available here. We are really incredibly fortunate in this county with the amount of resources that we have to do property history and start researching the individuals who lived here and existed here and were residents here in this town and in this county. And so there are some great records going all the way back to when the county was first established in the 1850s. Very few places in the United States have the amount of records that we have here, so it's really fortunate. And so what I did on this property, I just went from the beginning of time when the federal government took it over from the Native Americans and went all the way forward. And you can literally get documents and deeds to the entire history of the property and all the sales. So I have the Clarks and the Harpers and everybody who bought the property. I have their deeds in this booklet here, going all the way back to before the house was built. So the kind of title of this day is "If the Walls Could Talk." Well, I'm going to try to get the dirt to talk a little bit. So it starts out in 1862, and there was a crew of 3 surveyors that were probably within 4 or 5 blocks of here. So that's as close as I was able to get people actually walking across this land, within 4 or 5 blocks. And they were surveying the General Land Office survey. So this is the first survey that had to be done before you could actually start settling and homesteading the property. And that was done in 1862. And I actually got their field notes, and they went, it was from September 19th to 25th of 1862. And they were always commenting on steep hills that they had to cross over, right? Because they had to go straight lines. They couldn't go up the side of a hill. They had to go straight up the hill because they were doing north, south, east, west lines. And in this general vicinity, it seemed like there was nothing, there was a number of cedar trees. So I think there was a grove of cedar in this general area. There was fir trees, of course, too, but there were some cedar trees. And there was a creek that was nearby. Unfortunately, I don't have these on display, so I'll just kind of show you. So this is right here. This is the original map that was done after that 1862 survey. And you see the green square there, that's where this property is. It's a 40-acre tract is what is denoted right there. And if you see just immediately to the north, there's this stream. And it must have been a fairly substantial one, and I think it ended right around Loman Park, or maybe just a little bit south of that. And they were commenting that it was 4 feet wide at Puget Sound. So it was a fairly substantial, in September, after the summer, it was a fairly substantial stream. So that was one interesting thing about that, and these guys complaining about these steep hills that they had to cross. So it wasn't for another 7 years before the first individual who actually bought this area that I have highlighted in green. His name was George Olay. And he got a 40-acre tract, which is what that is. And 40 acres, just to give you an idea, is 5 blocks by 5 blocks. So it would be, in this area, it would cover from, if Myrtle existed on the north side, it would be where Myrtle is down to Webster and from California to 39. So that's the area that he homesteaded. Well, and he didn't really homestead it. You had the option to buy property if you wanted to. And so he got that 40 acres for $50. $1.25 an acre.
Wow.
And George Oulet was a French Canadian. And the interesting thing, just as a sideline, the interesting thing is from about 1811 to 1847, the speaking language in this area, in the Pacific Northwest, was French. That was, it was all the fur traders that were here, the Hudson's Bay Company. The officers of Hudson's Bay were English, but all the workers were French. So the main language was French, and most of the French were French Canadians. George Oulet was born in Montreal. There might be a possibility that he might have been, his family might have come out here as a fur trader, worked for the Hudson's Bay, but I only did this research in a couple of weeks, so I didn't have a chance to kind of follow that track. So he got in 1869. He was also, Oulet was the first settler in Burien. So he basically got Burien started, and he homesteaded that area down there. Okay. So then, in 1871, George Oulet sells the property in June of 71 to a James McNaught. Now, James McNaught was an attorney, so this is the beginning of the speculators arriving in this area. He was an attorney, and he was just picking up land as he found it. And it was in June of 1871, and George didn't make much money. As a matter of fact, he lost some money. He bought the property for $40, the 40 acres, $1 an acre. James McNaught, not too many people know about him, but he was really influential in the Seattle area. He was one of the incorporators of the Seattle Walla Walla Railroad Company, which was the first railroad that was built from Seattle around Lake Washington to the coal mines on the east side. And then during the 1880s and 1890s, he was basically the eyes, ears, and voice of the Northern Pacific Railroad Company. He was kind of the local representative for the Northern Pacific Railroad Company, which was the first major railroad that arrived here in Puget Sound. And so he really, and then when things really, crises broke out, the officers from back east would come out. But he, and one reason why I don't think he got much recognition was because it was a love-hate relationship with the railroad companies. The railroad companies had a monopoly, and so whenever bad things was happening relating to the locals getting all riled up about the railroads, James McNaught would have to be there giving a presentation and defending the railroad company. James McNaught didn't hold on to the property very long. He just held on to it for a month. He sold to a gentleman by the name of Philo Remington. Now, he made a hefty profit. He bought it for $40. He sold it to Remington for $160 after holding on to it for a month. I.e. speculation rampant here. Now, Philo was a person from New York, and he was the president of the Remington Arms, so Remington Firearms. And he came out here in 1871 kind of checking out the Northwest, and he had must heard something about the railroads coming out here, because the railroads, the Northern Pacific was about to make a decision as to where their terminus was going to be, and Philo came out here, and he spent 10 days from July 10th to July 20th. He was here for 10 days, kind of traveling all over the King County area, looking around. By the end of the month, he had spent $55,000, this is in 1871 dollars, for 200 platted lots. So that would be like, this house is on 3 platted lots. So he bought 200 platted lots, but most of them were in the downtown, kind of the downtown, greater downtown area. And 1,080 acres, which is like nearly 2 square miles of land, in addition to those 200 lots. He spent $52,000. Well, once that news broke, it became just a frenzy here. Everyone started to buy property because they were certain that the railroad was going to end up here in Seattle. Well, as most people know, it ended up in Tacoma. That was 1873. So Philo's take on where it was going to end, he didn't have good sources because it ended up in Tacoma. And so what he did in 1876, he sold the property basically for break even. He sold the property for $55,000 to his son-in-law. And his son-in-law was named Watson Squire. Watson Squire had never even seen the property out here when he put down $55,000 to buy it. This was Philo's first time when he came out here. So when Watson came out, he had been working for Remington Arms, and he had been traveling all over Europe, Middle East, Mexico, selling basically shiploads of arms all over the world. And when he came out here, he decided that doing that for 10 years in 1870 was enough, so he moved out here in 1879, and he saw his property for the first time. And just to go back a little bit, during the period of time when Remington owned it, these 1871 to 76, Remington also produced the first commercially successful typewriter that was done. So he basically, it had been selling a little bit before that, but they basically were able to commercialize it and manufacture it. And so you have the first typewriter being produced during the period of time when Philo Remington owned this property. So Watson Squire, and he was 38 years old when he paid $55,000 for it. He moved out here in 1879, and because of his influence back east, the President of the United States appointed him the Washington Territorial Governor.
Oh.
So he was the Territorial Governor between 1884 and 87. And the other thing that Squire is known for is the fact during the anti-Chinese riots that occurred in 1886, he was the one that declared martial law. So he put Seattle under martial law for a couple weeks during that period of time, brought in the militia to basically stand at every corner, every street corner, so that there wouldn't be riots here in this city. So you have somebody who has a substantial background owning property here. And then in right after statehood, he was appointed as the first senator, the first U.S. senator. So you have the typewriter manufacturer, first U.S. senator in Washington State, and the Washington Territorial Governor owning this property here. Doubtful that he probably even came out here and walked across it because he had all this $55,000 worth of property, but he did own it. In 1890, Squire was the largest King County taxpayer, so he was the largest landowner in the county in 1890. So it was a pretty major thing. In 1894, his real estate holdings were estimated to be $1 million, is what he owned. Then we come to him finally wanting to do something with this. So basically, from the time he bought it in 1876 up to 1907, it just languished. Nothing happened to it. It was just acreage. But in 1907, he did the first plat. And so that's it. Now, it's called the Gatewood Bed and Breakfast. Well, if this plat had survived, it would have been called the Woodley Bed and Breakfast because the street that it was called, that was right in front of the property was called Woodley Avenue. And that's where, so I highlighted the 3 lots in green as to where the property would have been because it got replatted. The one thing about when they did plat during that period of time, for some reason they always thought that it was nothing but the Great Plains. It was always flat land that you could just lay out north, south, east, west property. Well, it wasn't. And so they realized that they wouldn't be able to sell anything if they kept with this street grid. So the next one, they replatted a part of it, and this is highlighted in red, the area that was replatted, and this is what was done in 1909, and that's where the property is. Now, the one other thing about this in 1907 is that it was approved in, let's see, July 8th, 1907. Now, July 8th, it had to be approved by the city council and the mayor. Well, that was 3 days before the town of West Seattle ceased to exist. So on July 8th, this was still part of West Seattle. It was approved by the mayor and the city council of the town of West Seattle. And then 3 days later, they had their last meeting, and by the 24th of July, I think, it became part of the city of Seattle. So this is one of the last acts. And it was Ordinance 200 is what the ordinance number was when they approved it. The next map was done in 1909. And just to give you an idea, it was ordinance for the city of Seattle, and it was ordinance number 22,235. So just to give you a little sense of what the difference is. And this was done by the, let's see, what do they call it? Give me just a moment here. The Union Trust Company. And the Union Trust Company was a company that was created by Squire, basically to sell off his real estate. And so when he moved out here in 1879, he basically lived the rest of his life here in Seattle and sold off the property. And that's what he made his money on. He was well off. So that's kind of a brief history. Now, just to give you an idea, yes?
Can you comment on how the property got that peculiar type shape to it?
Oh, I think it was the topography. In other words, the street grid, however they decided to work the surveyors work the topography so that you could, instead of going straight up a hill, you could go across the hill. That's what created that pie shape.
And isn't the driveway, I don't know if it's still the case, was actually city property, it was a street
Yeah.
at 37th or something, which they never put in, but it was, I don't know, is it still city property?
It's 41st, so
Well, this is the street grid, and this is what shows the city.
Well, I think you show it there as the city property, but it was
Right.
never built.
Right.
Yeah.
So the driveway itself is our property, but if you see the wall that's made with the cement,
Yes.
that is actually technically on city property, and that green strip there is 41st Street.
So it's still,
Yep.
it's still owned by the city?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the stories today of the owners were just great, but the one interesting thing that I found is when the Clarks owned it, they actually owned lot 12, which is this adjoining lot, and that's, they sold it off in 61 or 62, I think. You probably can confirm that. That's where 7428 Gatewood is. So that was actually part of the estate that they owned, and so when it got time to start selling it off, that's the first thing they sold. So just to give you an idea of what happened to property prices, I did check that, and in the booklet there I have all the property prices. I wasn't able to find the Clark's price, but I found every other one. The Harpers paid in 1911 paid $1,100 for the land. In 1964, it went for $23,250. 1969 went for a little bit better than $39,000. It was $39,500. In 1987, it went for $170,000, and I wouldn't even want to guess of what it is assessed at today. So that's what I was able to pull together, and it was really fun working on that. It seemed like
And Greg, what can you tell us about what's going to happen with this notebook?
I'll leave it here, and I would actually, I haven't had a chance to kind of put things together on it, but one thing I did do, there are some maps in these plats. I made 8.5 by 11 plat maps for one each for the 5 families, and I left it with Bethany, and also the earlier plat, and then that colored, general land office survey map. So I assume that they'll be sending them to you. I only did one set for each family, and I didn't do any for the Pattersons, or I think one of the renters. Yeah, I didn't do it for them. I just did it for the owners, so maybe they can make some extra copies if anybody else wants any. So and for this, I will leave this at the table over there. And also, I have right on the front balcony, I have an old Crow atlas that shows actually the entire city. It was done in 1928. It shows the footprints of all the buildings that existed. in 1928 and shows where they are, and you can look up where you live and see what the neighborhood looked like in the late 20s, early 30s.
Nice.
So that's out front, and you can you can look at that and browse through that too.
Thank you.
Greg Lang, everybody. Okay, we're over time. What I want you to be able to have time to do is to socialize and tell more stories, hear more stories. There's wonderful food from Husky Deli. One more round of applause for the valet parking. This is Rico's Auto Bus provided that today. Thank you all for coming. This is just a very, very special occasion today. And it's a wonderful prelude to the afternoon when we'll have a whole nother round of people here. Families, thank you all for coming today. This is a one-of-a-kind gathering. We're just so grateful for you. You made the event today. And have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. You all right? I'll be right See people you recognize? Yeah, I see Anita Futerer. Mr. Futerer? Yes, how are you?
Nice to see you. My two kids are more here than over there.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
When I start life.
you can talk into the camera. You don't have to talk to me.
What do you want?
Talk to the camera. I want you to tell your name and
Yeah.
who you are in relation to the house.
Yeah, my name is Frank Guthrie. My mother's family, my mother was Margaret Harper, and her father and mother built this house in 1910, I think it was. And then she lived here until 1921 when she married my father, Norman Guthrie.
Okay. And do you have any memories of being in this house?
I think I was here when I was about 5 or 6 years old, but I can't remember very much. I remember vaguely the memory of the living room. That's about all I remember.
Have you come back since then?
No.
So this is your first time since you were 5 years old?
Yeah, right. My cousin, Bob Harper, who since died, his son has been over here, and he came over, I think, during the intervening years, but I never got over here myself.
When you were younger and heard stories about this house, what did they say about this place?
They didn't talk about it.
They didn't talk about it much.
No. My mother talked a little bit about it, but otherwise there wasn't too much. Because she was 20 when she left here, and I did come back a little bit when my grandmother lived here with my uncle, Guy Harper, Uncle Guy McDonald Harper, I think it was, and then they I think they rented it out for a while in the 30s, and then they sold it, and that's about all I know about it.
It's a big place.
I know.
Are you going to make your way upstairs?
I don't think I'm just going to stay in. I have a little trouble going up and down.
Well, I'm glad you made it this far.
Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful place. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.